the rest of the time. So,
we can't hear you right now.
See,
No, he's serious. Like you're going in and out right now.
Oh God. Okay, wait 1 second.
Now you're good.
I was just gonna say if I cut out, start cutting out, let me know and I'll try to switch to it.
Yeah, shit.
Also, I'm gonna take a local recording. I assume that's good with everyone because it's being streamed. So.
Samantha, I couldn't hear what you just said.
Oh, I said I'm gonna take a local recording. I assume that's good with everyone since it's being streamed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that I think there might be an issue. Like if you're in different places with your mic, you're going to sound differently. So just be conscious of that.
If I'm like directly in front of the computer, y'all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the acoustics of that room just really, really suck.
Yep. That's a good way to sum it up right there.
I have like.
Sam, the email on your wiki is fine. Okay, everyone good to send out the chain? All right, let's get started.
Zion, you need my email? Oh, you got it.
I got it.
I just got it as well.
Same. Let me just open it.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going here.
And hold on, I'm still setting it up. When I hit my mute button, that means I'm going to be ready.
Okay. In the meantime, are the other judges ready?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
Is there any other questions? Because I'm going to mute myself so no outside noise distraction.
No. All right. Part one is my story. Can you feel what it means to be a nigga? Can you feel what it means to be constantly exhausted? Can you feel the negativity prescribed on you before you even enter the world? I'm tired. Tired of the pessimism, tired of the violence, tired of the lies, tired of the inability to feel myself and others to feel me. Gillespie, 19 niggas only feel their theory. Niggas only feel like world. They feel like the world built atop you. Don't feel the way of being in a position by death. Niggas only feel like my mom used to lie. You should tell me I can kill them with intelligence. And they'd have to care. They'd have to start working towards something. Undoing anti-blackness. My mom lied. There was nothing in this world I wasn't going to prevent from sustaining the structure. What continues the position? Niggas are definitely about whether the world's funny rational. It's about the fact that niggas don't feel me and I never will because of something ability, a black feeling. Whether society they tell me I'm more than my ejection. They tell me life some hot shit, some real shit that's desire, the longer desire, life worth living rather than question if I experience. There ain't no reason to celebrate this if that doesn't leave it. This rest of depression, black depression is in for the afterlife of slavery of 500 years accounting for which there's no innocence. I'm tired of celebrating that every day something has tried to kill me. These problems keep going. Oh, me used to be Afro-Pressed, new me just black and depressed. Perhaps what happened when you start feeling your theory? Underneath that until they explain the black world is I feel like no one is ever going to feel you. There should be no name for this Afro-Depression. And when black does raise their voice and offers solo, they feel they have to in order to prepare us for a world that hates us, to see us as a thug, a threat, a criminal. The role about to endorse embrace black hair, societal structure, wide and start accessing black males is replicate through generational blackmail. They learned this for to their deaths. And after 19, black men inherit and passed on a legacy of trauma for generation hyper-masculine socialization. Black men teach the same way why Americans see them and how to protect themselves through stuff like unhealthy relationship with masculinity, teaching that in a world that looks at them like grown men capable of bad. There's no room for vulnerability. Truth is, black men are deeply fragile. Black men have societal void feelings that have been ingrained in the mentality of young men. The black young males are placed external factors and broader societal structures. That's to be tough on the other in terms of their masculinity. And why instant power structures are hurting my community. This seemingly necessary adaptation and black males target the stereotypes result in common now about the emotional depression amongst black men because we're forced to assimilate to society. The culture when it's duly visible and visible atoms. I remember my first encounter with toxic masculinity before I knew what it was or why I was completely fractured in black community. My male kind of started to bleed when he started to cry. That's why you crying, stuck it up as visible. Switch like 2 minutes later the game was back on. It was calm. Conversation from men. The man when it comes to emotional stuff and what would happen if he asked what was okay, if he was okay. The man black male community among young boys and men caught. I can't relate to receiving tough love rather regular. The kind of love that teaches black males boys to bottle their emotional suppressive feeling vulnerabilities and acknowledge the black male community, young black boys are crying assaulted because they are afraid of what others might think of us. They saw them the state that they too, but they just the rest of us, right? That's been patriarchal ways, dominance, black men who are building a barrier between them and white America. Black men have often toxic masculinity, resort to sanity that can provide America's social political structure. The institution has oppressed everyone except wealthy white men. This reality coupled with its desperation like black men with no other choice but to assimilate and dominant culture. And this explains and reproduces the violence within the black community, patriarchy, attacking masculinity affects the black community as a whole. And this internalized masculinity and the black is causing repression and trauma that black men experience. This shit has taken a major toll on me, my brothers, my fathers, our mental and emotional well-being. We are taught to shut up, don't cry, don't express ourselves, man up, bottle up. And though, does anybody know how it feels to be a nigga yet? Do you even care? This trauma shit is destroying us. Adam 3, this problems are deeply integrated in how we raise black men, black males, I'm with the black community are taking a message on their mental health here, and about the feelings of emotion, denying their humanity, the right to feel black men are totally repressed feelings that come from trauma for the sake of upholding tasking model linear world, or can anger, frustration, guilt, and sadness be placed black males go up learning the vulnerability to be fair that they are at risk of developing mental health problems. Young black boys understand their pressure by both internal and external factors have masculine demands. Men for the men who are starting from the emotional vulnerability, disrooting race relations, their lives, including their own, they can be understood, unlearned by teaching black boys about emotional vulnerability, improving their mental health and emotional intelligence by learning how to accept and understand feelings, emotion, empathy will come to experience, so not be overlooked. The trauma of any kind can leave that lasting damage. Any critique in the black community doesn't make one end the black if it is done in the ways that can further development of the community. Like black boys cry. Now part 2 is the offense. That's like before the states also ban legal towns. So I'm clear. I don't fit any methodological one. Instead, imagine a world that first black to black here. 1 point laws are based on racial injustice, destruction of human rights, violence, AI development, implementation are built with bias that harm black and brown folks. Super lethal times, weapons, weapons, intel, fonts. That's the capacity our attention for war and Dr. King of black theology, fighting for liberation, explains beautifully why we must oppose such things. Dr. King 60 now became more of a way of life. Anyone is independence without violence, hatred, bitterness, found nowhere in India. I do not want to get the person not much work miracles overnight. The first that the heart finally reaches opponents and that becomes a reality. The need for non-violence international relations, that potential destruction, this of weapon, the war rules, the possibility of war, even serving as good as mankind has right to survive. We must find alternatives to war and destruction to church. Cannot mean that while mankind fights the threats of annihilation, transmits confidence into the arms race. Part 3 is black spirituality. I did it. Mama, dad, papa, my bros. I found a communal tactic that affirms rather than negates blacks, that breathes hope rather than pessimism, that speaks lightness in the darkness, that can gently care for and speak to the mental and emotional peace of me and my niggas. Black liberation theology. Kona, wait. Black liberation theology, echo the major black power movement. I found it just inspiration in the black in the Bible. God is intimately connected to community that suffers, Jesus outlines the purpose of the ministry to eradicate poverty, every freedom, liberation for depressed, black liberation, persecution to that violence, but instead constructed the whole point is the liberation question I'm starting to think about. This is essentially what white culture, and this ain't just about this for niggas. This ain't about this is about opposing white power structures and about embodying ourselves in positive ways, about unity and peace despite the differences we have, about love and hope despite the suffering we endure. I mean, black Jesus suffered most yet and loved more than words can describe. Ready 20. Black identify in any simplistic way of categorizing people to term black is a political statement related to marginalization. Being black is not just about those who are of African descent, related to non-white groups who are suffering experience racism. Using the term black is to identify on the alternative side of what is considered acceptable. This tradition has its roots in coalition policies. We mean a radical thing into how we conceive of God in light of suffering and oppression in the world run by white people. Black theology identifies God as committed to liberation, freeing black people from oppression, enslaved Africans, led to the inherent liberative aspects of the Bible. Cone identifies God with those who are martyrs and oppressed. The term black is always linked with negative connotation. God and black overthrows and that's release the captives from their oppression. Black theology seeks to promote living together in unity, world that changes race and Holy Spirit does not eradicate differences, rather celebrates black theology to look at how we live together and cross the differences. In the case, outweighs the severe duration shit has been going on for centuries and change them must. Battle fatigue is try or die. The world has been built on my downfall. So how many more rounds are you going to dismiss the concern of niggas and favor these anti-black arguments? Ready? 2. Essential part of black theology has been critiquing the alleged superiority of white intelligence, in which we see the world the notion that white people are superior. The reason most white theologians have engaged with the issue of whiteness due to invisibility. Whiteness over the past 5 years, beginning with slavery, our lives have been constant battle to assert that we matter. Black theology and invitations to the world through the eye of those who are suffering. The system of racism, such in the European colonialism, not being replicated in Asian neoliberalism, globalization, need for changes when everything about the pandemic. Black theology, liberation, habit, committed to structure, change, personal transformation. There's just equality for all. I have extra time. I'll read one more card and I'll send it after this. Sexism, patriarchal dominance, are often the result of that constant feeling of powerlessness and depression. Adams 4. Often under masculinity and characteristics of black male out of necessity protecting himself in the face of oppression. One reason chrome attacks of masculinity. Notice how it affects the black female. Black men have been embedded in the subject text in the black community by starting his dominance instead of feelings of weakness. He expects society over the black female, feeling as though they're constantly on edge lives. Always in jeopardy because condition powerlessness does not just find connotation here. Black men have historically been depicted as dangerous, aggressive, violent, nature creating cycling. I feel like men should be fair because the motive behind killing is all black men. I cut that black man. I'll send that cut card, and then whenever you're good for cross, I'm good.
Okay, I'll just start with the card. You good?
Yep.
Okay, so I understand like the methodology of the affirmative would be Black liberation theology. My question is, why does voting AF enact that methodology? Or if it doesn't, why is the ballot important?
Yeah, sure. I guess there's a couple arguments. First is that through the affirmation of the ban of lethal autonomous weapons, we say that a stance against these weapons is a form of advocating and endorsing forms of Black care, spirituality through that. The second argument is that into the debate space, it is uniquely key to forefront the ways in which Black people are embodying themselves in positive ways to create these spirits of care, i.e., space and care cannot happen in the debate space if we're
Why
actively protecting Black
for
presence.
something those things? Like if you lose this round, why has that gutted affirmative solvency? I guess is my question.
Yeah, sure. First, once again, we have reasons why lethal autonomous weapon systems are bad for both a methodology and our thesis claim, which means that voting negative is sustaining those like systems that perpetuate the violence we talked about. The second argument is that within the debate space, we say that Black ballots, i.e., Black success, is something that is good to promote the care and forefront the ways in which Blackness exists in positive ways within the debate space.
Okay, I guess two questions. So first is about your plan or your like advocacy text. If I prove LAWs should not be banned, is that sufficient to negate, or do I also have to prove that your methodology of like Black liberation theology is bad?
Yeah, you also have to prove that the method in which we engage in the debate space is bad.
Okay, cool, but you can win either?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me. The second question, so what does individual visibility, i.e. you going further in the Tournament of Champions, what does that do to combat broader structures of anti-Blackness, and why is success for traditional metrics key to creating communities of care?
I think viewing like a Black debater winning TOC this year, which will happen by the way, as an individual issue is definitely wrong because that's not an individual. Rather, it is creating spaces of care. It allows us to understand and recognize and see Blackness in the debate space in positive ways. Sure, positivity is not only through ballot and success, but throughout the way of giving like Black debaters who are out there watching encouragement and space of care and comfortability with embracing positivity within the debate space.
That makes sense to me. Why is it good for engagement in debate to occur, Black engagement and also engagement writ large? If it's good for
What do you mean by engagement?
engagement, like the process of debating arguments in which both sides make arguments and they interact with each other?
Yeah, sure. I think that the affirmative is not going to take a stance that it is productive necessarily for us to have engagements under the guise of how non-Black people would like us to have engagement. Rather, we say that a debate space that is a form of care in which Black people can engage with each other about methods of resistance of communal tactics.
So I guess that brings me to the question, as a non-Black person negating the affirmative, is it possible for me to engage with this affirmative and have a productive discussion come from it, or is it like structurally impossible for that to occur?
Yeah, I think your role for this round is to lose.
So if it's structurally impossible for any productive discussion,
Well, it's not necessarily that, but it's rather the way in which we have embraced and confronted the debate space with the affirmative will take a stance against, I guess, your orientation towards getting the ballot.
I'll run prep. Why is using the ballot as a metric of success like a positive thing?
Well, sure. One is that there's so much anti-Blackness in the debate space. We understand and kind of understand Blackness in negative ways during the debate space. The ballot recognizes the ways in which when Blackness embraces our positivity, speaks in our feelings, and embraces these forms of communal care can be kind of affirmed and like embraced within the debate space, which gets proliferated.
Okay. Why didn't you disclose the app when I asked?
Because it's new. Why would I do that? It's TOC Cordis.
So, like, is it a competitive incentive? Is it because you don't want me to engage? That is not really an answer.
Both. Like, yeah, there's strategic reasons not to disclose the app. Also, it's just like, if non-Black people aren't going to disclose new apps to me, I don't see why there's a reason for Black people to start disclosing new apps. That's not how it works.
What is Black theology? Is it like, what if you don't believe in God? Like, how do you access
Yeah.
Black theology? I assume it's religion, so.
Yeah, it's about the way in which Black people have their, like, for example, Black theology for me may be different for Randall or Austin. It's about the way in which we, as our own selves, have a form of spiritual care within our communities. It's not a unified version of theology. Rather, it is a kind of overarching notion that spirituality and kind of forms of care is good and productive for individuals in the Black community.
Yeah. Is progress through like political avenues, is that something productive or possible?
What does progress through political avenues look like or mean?
You're engaging with the political?
Like the app doesn't defend implementation, but I'm not going to say every single instance
Okay.
in the political will always be terminally anti-Black.
That makes sense. Okay, I have 50 seconds left. I'll sum it up. It's 3 inches. Oh, hold up.
You said tooth in case?
Yeah, I took like 3 seconds right there. We'll see.
Wait, Sam, is it 2 or 3?
Oh, sorry, I meant I said 2. That was my one.
So 2?
Your audio's a little muffled.
Wait,
Could
Yeah,
you
you
type
sound-
it? Just type it. Just type it, please.
one sec. I'm gonna try to put my headphones in and see if it helps. Maybe if it's a little.
I think it's just when you're not in front of your mic, it's that we can't hear you. I think when you're in front of your mic, you're good.
Sounds good. It's breathing.
Well, actually, that's not true because just now you were a little more light.
I'm just gonna test the headphones really
Now
quickly.
you're good. For me, now you're good. You can do clearly.
You didn't come through clearly for me.
I'm just gonna test the headphones because if they don't work, I'll just record it. Or like. Is this better for people, or the same?
Yes. It's better.
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 Yeah.
Okay.
Better,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry,
And is-
I had like good headphones and they broke, and so now I'm kind of.
So is it 2 off or 3 off?
It's 3 off.
All right.
And I just sent the doc. Okay, does everyone have it?
Okay, I'm good.
Everyone else?
I am good.
And if my audio cuts out just because it seems to be happening, I'm just gonna keep talking and I'll send you the recording. Okay, cool. I think that's everybody. A interpretation of the one you see only guard offense of the desirability of the resolution of self-states, ultimately feel transposing via violation of solving the policy. Words and phrases 64 result is a determination ability to establish by law. LAWs are serious. 12 weapon systems communication left here further invented by human operator director conscious law. LAWs can supervise them. Somebody comes weapon systems. We don't require defending a state's interest notion to fiat. They can defend a bottom up command for states within LAWs, but they can only guard the offense of the desirability of the demand, not the resolution, not the methodology. They are best assured helpful solving solve our offense because they're number of possible methodologies that are used in active plan C to preserve substantive engagement. One is preparation, the finite amount of safe in LAWs, but an infinite number of non-topical furniture packing the topic means they can prepare for 6 months an issue that catches by surprise. Preparation controls the internal link to engage with research, demonstrate pedagogy, humility is only portable. Debate training the process of debate outweighs the content. Only our interpretation generates the argumentative skills needed to rigorously defend our thrown out of our create engage the system of self-reflexivity to advocate for positive change. 2 truth testing can't vote on case that we seek is lack of preparation from rigorous testing, but AC claims if we win, parents don't have to quote unquote outweigh other impacts. Research that debate is good at forces the barriers consider a controversial issue from multiple perspectives, which is bad. Prevents ideological dogmatism, even if they prove the topic is bad. The process of preparing and defending proposals and educational benefit engaging at TSTV1. Read the act they did, but only read it or only garner offense off of defending an LAW ban. This is proven up cross-ex where they just should have answered the question differently, i.e. that saying an LAWs ought not be banned would be sufficient to negate the affirmative, which it wasn't in this case. 2 Solomons definitions of the TVA are not our net ground. They are entitled to the perfect affirmative. Even if you don't buy education impacts fairness and intrinsic good and the only possible impact to your valid debates again, force better lose competitive norms that term and by prove alternate impacts like activism or education can be pursued in other forms of out can change their subjectivities, but it can rectify in unfairness. Ethics paradigm issues 1 T from has to be dropped the rear and dicer method of engagement because you couldn't engage fairly with their affirmative cross-light truth testing. 2 can be interpretations, reasonability is arbitrary and can be really topical causes of reasonable and questionable argumentation. 3 RBS and infections incentivize encourage all non-theory respects substances and incentivizes baiting theories of use of practices no impact for no impact turns exclusions are inevitable because only 45 minutes was best to draw those exclusions on reciprocal lines to ensure a role for the negative. Next, interpretation debaters must disclose the advocacy and role of valid text. That's a flipped violation. Cross-ex I can send screenshots. Zion, you're obviously not going to lie. You know you didn't disclose that new non-topical affirmatives are a voting issue. They're able to monopolize prep and be anti-topical while claiming the moral high ground. This turns all the education impact. Educational claims proves they aren't genuinely interested in having a good debate but only care about strategy. UK after Baptists can't develop case-specific strategies, only generic responses. Also means we can't test political strategies or their method, which proves they refuse to close this turns the app because we can't debate over movements, methods, or compare theories of power disclosure. Solves our offense and there's voting issue for competitive equity, education, and engagement. Opacity is a political achievement, not an ontological and epistemological given. Fighting against military networks is a prerequisite for opacity. Davis. 19. The right to opacity to more than is given the critical sense lies in its anti-colonial supposed to equate as part of protective opacity for the community capacity for ontologically able supposed to achieve materials in historian, but it's supposed to claim the concept of non-silence and to act in the world. Opacity cannot protect population capacity, not historically prevent the domination capacity built in production, not politically helpful. This is not mobilization based on identity. The right to opacity claims the politics and the application identity, but is reclaiming the force against transparency across like the paradigm issues and stuff like truth testing from the other page. Next. The affirmative is riddled with leftist non-colleague debate is a massive network of scholars, activists, policymakers, all of whom can and should orient their energy towards the production of a better world. The presumption that we should not challenge structures on the level of scope and scale with the resources debate offers us in the explicit concession of fascism. Additionally, fragmented politics generate disempowerment. A survival-based practice becomes self-employing labor that becomes weaponized under neoliberalism against those who cannot survive or be in archaic well enough. Hester 17. A growing emphasis on fragmentation, singularity, process of avoiding totalizing genocide, the structural analysis, capitalism, difference in scope and scale between that which is being influenced strategies to oppose the generative of disempowerment, capitalism, powers, and benefit. As a result, on the other hand, these theories celebrate local fragmented pressure from the forms available criticize big picture thinking potentially versus application they observe as it relates to politics to seek to contest expensive hegemonic pressure of neoliberal capitalism, persistent kind of distraction, anxiety hanging over progressive politics, renewed appetite for ambition, future-oriented, emancipatory politics, advance, make itself felt, acceleration calls to build an intellectual infrastructure capable of creating new ideology, economic and social model, nothing be exempt an example, advance from the enactment of revisionary processes. Their cessation of revolution institution building abdicates the potential for true communal power, reducing revolution to reactive bursts of energy. This debate must be a question of the speed, scope, and scale of revolutionary strategy. Only dual power organizing can build institutions that meet the material needs of communities and construct a revolutionary base in the face of compounding crises of climate change, imperialism, and fascism. Escalante 19. Dual power gives a massive institution which can definitely provide material needs in times of capitalist crisis, socials, agricultural distribution programs, and take ground like capitalist states by meeting the needs of masses while providing the social self-management political institution can function independently. Capitalism not only literally saving lives but demonstrating the possibility of revolutionary project for 12 years. Let me capture for climate change. We are in a push for the question is not whether we can escape but whether we can survive. Technology cannot sufficiently combat this crisis. High-tech infrastructure wars, constant militarism, warfare, imperial states can impede pursuits influence in order to facilitate cheap wars, shows destruction. If we don't find a way to save ourselves, the collapse of human civilization is a real possibility. When filled with movement, infrastructure can survive. Revolution, the Marxist Center has done work developing socialist institutions through tenants, organizing to serve the people, programs, mutual aid is not enough. We cannot simply make capitalism more survival. Respected institutions for a broader revolutionary movement. We have to simply declare institutions for revolution. They have to belong through a revolutionary movement, working for revolutionary aims and purpose. Thus, to radicalize the masses through meeting the needs of the communities in which it operates. Revolutionary institutions provide housing and build a base. Thus, the only alternative is to affirm the model of the Communist Party. Only democratic centralist dual power organizing can provide effective accountability mechanisms to correct unproductive tendencies, educate and mobilize marginalized communities, and connect local struggles to a movement for international liberation. Escalante 18. Space building and dual power strategy can be best forwarded through party organizing all of this. Move to select powerful revolution, social tendency, revolution not currently possible, dual power response by building institutions between people to demonstrate that communists can offer relief from capitalism to mobilize the base have already done the work of building communist parties, not enough to need to build institutions of dual power in the name of communism instead of a public face the Communist Party membership is formally unified over party line, demonstrated by democratic centralist decision making for holding party member account with unifying action for educating empower communities that theorize to communists about organizing communities to literally fight for their liberation, formal structures, law, and individual locals have a voice in the open debate, but also for unified strategy, party organizing, organized to be held accountable, allow criticism to function with unity, working together to sharpen strategies, and how chauvinist ideas and accountability is crucial in spirits of colonial ideals, frequently in fact, leftist organizing, creating formal procedure laws to address these consistent problems, organizations that adopt party models alongside recruitment, education, economies, fear, impact, and establishment of military party cadres capable of defending institutions from state terror. Mark the card at state terror. Tactics debate are good for subject formation, political organizing, prefer majority. 18. Intimate relation between tactical choice and collective interests. The consistency of lifespan over the collective actors to strategically deploy identities and political goals of micro level groups to negotiate the precise conduct, value, and flexibility changes. Place for opportunity to counter harness collective agency and adopt contextual conduct with an overall ideological consistency. Repertoire plays the theorizing plays little attention to what works, allows for micro expressions and concern for the wider patterns boycott for the long tradition of intolerance alongside the DOS attacks and reinforce the moral economy, placing community at the heart of resistance neoliberalism, appropriating privatized space to confront capitalism and bonds of socialization strategy and long-term thinking and connecting activism with goals tactics are the means to advance the market, advance them. The case page. Top level, we should presume -1 is just a palliative. Putting Zion to the finals of the TOC, or putting Zion to the summits of the TOC does not do any structural change, but rather allows people in power to feel like they've done enough and they have a creative representation, which turns the case argument. Second, that there's no spill up. There's no reason why Zion winning TOC would necessarily inspire others. And if it does spill up, it's a bad model spill up that is not a community care, but rather a form of idolization, where his success is seen as representative of the broader community, and proves the link to the captive because success is seen as necessary in order to be the one who sort of pulled yourself up by the bootstraps to represent the community, which is a bad form of visibility politics. So there's no reason that there was no reason the ballot is tying themselves to oppressive structures. If they had themselves to oppressive structures, we'll read the champagne card here. Suspicious of ignorance in the liberal academy is lent to our stories on Western and casting ourselves as an object of knowledge is necessarily gained. The academy mentioned interpolate to the oppositional cultural practices, even under the guise of appreciating different academies, containing the threat of difference by celebrating privilege and marginals out of our afternoons, make possible federalization. Academics are standing for interest and don't vote for them. Just don't vote for a vote from the argument. One is that it causes oppression limits between which person deserves or how would be their representation would be better. Second is that arguments in debate should be about arguments, not people. That leaves anything else leads to ad homs, which is a terrible model debate. It also should cross by the tactics debate good cards, which answers all the sort of individual focus good. I can send a marked doc since I marked like 3 cards, I think. Okay. Everyone good? Slash, did that speech all like audio-wise go through? Cool.
Yeah. Are you good for cross? The card on case, can you explain the argument, I guess?
It's a critique of, so sort of 2 things. First, it's a critique of the use of autobiographical narratives in liberal academy. Second, it's a critique of the sort of star system whereby you're like, well, if like I succeed, then it'll inspire others to succeed. But our argument is that it just gets co-opted to sort of use it as a form of tokenization, where they select sort of privileged marginals is the term, or privileged marginals is the term the card uses, where those are elevated to be like, look, like, yes, we are inclusive. Yes, it's possible for Black people to succeed, for X group to succeed. And instead of creating an inspirational effect, instead has the opposite effect where it's co-opted by the liberal academy in order to create this guise of like appreciation for difference.
Okay. I think it's on the T shell or wherever there's the T shell, the Davis evidence, or actually no, that's the second off, the Davis evidence. Can you explain the warrant and the implication?
It says that opacity itself is not just like an intrinsic good. So it's a preempt if you're like, we should be fluid and not make ourselves transparent, and like we need the ability to be opaque, to not be predictable. Our argument is that opacity.
Is that specific to Black opacity?
It's specific to anti-colonial, decolonial, anti-racist opacity. I think it's in the context of glissant. It's definitely, I definitely think it's in the context of opacity that you're talking about. It gives the example of indigenous groups in the way that their opacity sort of in and of itself is not revolutionary, but only when weaponized in a particular political context towards a concrete goal. It also gives examples. I can like parse through the examples, but it's not opacity, it's opacity in the anti-racist and anti-colonial movements.
That's fine. The second argument is a combination of new non-TAFs bad, additionally with like the disclosure argument. I mean, it's the same argument. Like our argument is just that you have to give us an advocacy text and the role of the ballot. You don't have to like send me the whole app. You just have to give me what the method of the affirmative is and the role of the ballot. Okay, sure. How does that solve the offense?
Because I know, because of the roll the ballot, I know what offense links to the affirmative. Because of the method text, I know what I'm able to garner links to for things like.
Okay, what differently would you have been able to garner links if you knew those specific lines?
I mean,
How would your 1.5s change?
I mean, I could cut specific links to the CapK. I could have cut links
Yeah,
to
like
more
what?
less generic. I mean,
Like
I
what?
don't know, because the whole point is I only have 5 minutes to read this entire new app and make a 1 and 2 to it. The whole point is I don't know what I could have read because it was not given time to, Google the term and read through the first page on Google Scholar, because I could not have read and engaged with their literature because I literally had 450 or 410 of prep to do that. Our argument is that if I had 30 minutes of preparation, I would have done things like search it up on Google Scholar, read articles about it, read articles responding to those articles. I could have cut links, etc. Which
That's fine. What's the status of the K?
Conditional.
All right, I'll take. Okay, 318 left. There'd be like a card or two, so let me send that out.
Can you send counterinterest too? Just like the text.
Yeah, I think the card might be with it, so
Cool.
if not, I'll make sure it is. Okay, that should be sent. They're in the process of sending. In the meantime, the order will be case and then the offs in the order they are read.
I don't have it. Okay, just got it. Okay, I'm going.
Okay, judges, are you all good?
Oh, wait, hold up. I only got 3 sheets of paper.
I need like 30 seconds. Yeah, I'm good when they are.
Sorry, wait. I only have 3 sheets of paper. I'll just use the back. Yeah, I'll just use the back. I'm giving you.
Okay, the other two judges, are you all good? Chris Randall. All right, bet. Black communities are under pressure. Prepare black males for the white world. We lose the ability to feel. 3 impacts. We bottle away our emotions. We are communities dividing. Black people are emotionally, mentally exhausted. So black haters try or die. Lost the tools of whiteness, exploiting black human rights, perpetuate violence and oppression with guts, capabilities of black spiritual. Motive thoughts, the world master, doors to race black here. Methods of creating communities where niggas can be themselves. Black liberation is the intersection of spiritual affirmation, resistance. Also, see the way I approach the spaces through the areas allows me to express and care. That's performance. It outweighs all the determined impacts and portability and norms that we prioritize mental liberated individuals. I know it's a new app, but you just straight drop the framing and theory of how you view the world perception. No, it's not a question of sovereignty, rather endurance to survival. That the app allows black people to detach themselves from the negativity that's prescribed to the presumption. Since before the anti-black status quo, it does not allow us to detach ourselves from this vulnerability. There's also presumption is anti-black because it's kind of the logic that we see in criminal courts. You say balance, but whoever claims no black success is good to produce positive images of blackness. One inspires, motivates black kids to embrace black excellence. Two encounters the past narratives. I mean, the black space. You say it's about individualism, but I answer that on the card. You say it's relying on voting for my identity, but no, it's about affirming my method that affirms the grammar of serving that understands and talks about how black communities and black kids are unable to feel themselves within the base. They say it gets co-opted. No, can't get co-opted. So far, methods just allow niggas to feel themselves. Their theory and commonality. Even if it's co-opted, we are not attempting to change the political resolve and block this case solves co-option as a result of productive desire for maintaining domination control was explained by patriarchy and TOC the individual card that they read. No, it's not individual, rather it's literally a communal tactic. Too bad you didn't grapple with the methodology, but it's literally a communal tactic that focuses on the community and other things for the community. So it's not individuals. Too is individual is good because otherwise we can never have a form of care and feeling of ourselves, which is exactly our theorization of the problem with the world itself. Counter black leaders can read the furnace that centralized black here. 8 points about finding commonality against black communities, checks back against cycle of violence. 3 points good for education. And for black students, we can speak freely about their feelings that we are forced to bottle up. See, when it solves your fears, you can have your desire to make every other round. I mean, 8 point benefit of rules is a general principle, which is from type method. B point I affirm the I've enacted banning laws, banning laws through the methodology of black here. Next is affirmatives that enacted for one specific location of topical Webster. 18 definitions of legal applications, section on bottom. All impactors are also recently auto-adopted because of proof your model was actually in the black 1 point linguistics that you have to language to your definition of topicality, which creates a model which only your interpretation of what is topical matters. 2 ways reading topic against topical black debaters and black because it re-exacerbates exhaustion creating racial battle fatigue. Next is let me wait case any proof there's warrants for unfair. Our case outweighs the survivability, accessibility, and unpredictability. Niggas being predictable is good. Encourage and advance the fugitivity policies where we can care about ourselves and the community. Otherwise, we have to labor and exhaust ourselves for you. Engagement is bad and promotes compensation of black care, which creates incentive to negate and problems our community taxes. Also, we are better for engagement. We provide in multiple ways to test the affirm. You say truth that this argument is anti-black because their argument says that we should just reject black scholarship and experiences because it wasn't legible enough to submit the suicide debate. No, the affirmative abandons nuclear weapons, bans lethal atomic weapons. Also, is that you force black to be negative, which is not solved. The exhaustion is part of the affirmative. TVA cross by impact terms. Also, I in the TVA. You read to take us up. You lead to respect to politics. Would you tell black people how they cannot get fairness out of votership, decadence, equal opportunity that was not able for black people to show the field was never playing field. We're trying to change the activity. Rather, is a good amount to endorse. Impact terms is not inevitable, and it's not from so inevitability. New aspect. Counter your interior mind is black kids cosplay are weighing arguments from the T-show and a labor said one is guerrilla tactics. New allow black students to use guerrilla tactics to protest or strategies and method for being negated or to the condensation from numbers. Also resistant crime. New allow black students to refine their resistance strategies and have multitude of ways, including new ideas on testing. Next is psychological violence for persons that show to be more optimistic. Literature black to me and try to think out to shame to the same app by not topicality is the black. I mean non-T. I didn't work on the next is reading disclosures. I research out to me out and say you want me to out my charges leads a Mendigo circle of black students being contested negated and published to the Davis that T. Evans and specifics the black opacity cannot show cannot solve case and for this to our shit in this cap. Reject the KA point your attending Cowboys over to explanation of Boston and the black papers over the block of the cares and feelings. B point Gillespie. This system is rooted in coming out of multiple different forms of violence. And the black controls returning to cap. Slavery, incarceration are not possible. Absent black subjugation. Alternatives cannot self-cation. Analysis history is exclusion to non-material violence. The violence of black psyche. Case that waste that becomes a triad risk issue. You fracture black communities. We did the work above sequencing permutation duty after the alternative. Niggas need to care and feel to engage in alternative permutation. Do both the alternative and not mutually exclusive. We use black here to deconstruct it. Link their combat attacks and masculinity structure, internal, external strength. Black to deconstruct capitalist ideologies. Do black liberation ideology. I won't read the card, but has evidence not responsive to the absence. We agree their interpretation debate is good, but fragmentation is good because black women are uniquely key for resistance and their terminally for extinction case that weighs the probability of cyclicality and also right extinction is non-unique so far black people are already dying both immaturely and immaturely through the psyches.
Owen Prep, what was the argument you made on New Apps bad under iMeet?
One sec. Reading disclosures is an a priori reason to drop them because it leads to a circuit in which you try to out black debaters through contestation and negation.
Okay. And the first point was something about guerrilla tactics. Could you explain that?
New apps allow black debaters to use guerrilla tactics to protect our strategies and methods from being negated, de-radicalized, or contaminated by other movements, i.e. novice people. Preventing them from knowing our methods is key for our communal tactics to get off the ground.
T framework, new app's bad case.
Wait, what?
T framework, new app's bad case. Is everyone good?
You said new framework?
T framework.
Okay.
Like the first off, like T different topic. And then case. Is everybody good? Judges?
Yeah.
Okay. One sec. I'm not going for topicality. Don't vote affirmative one. I just claim the model debate was bad. The ballot is a reflection of that. You can think their model was good. Absent voting absent, they haven't won their advocacy too. We should experiment with ideological opposition. Rating T is a good thing, even if it's false. It makes us think about its validity. Testing with a multiplicity of strategies from different directions is key to just good decision making. 3, winning offense here requires an independent reason that these arguments are voting issues. They were light on that in the one area. You should use a standard of did my understanding of this argument change from the one area to the two areas to determine what's new. 4 is for affirmative contradiction. If T is bad and you vote on this argument, then you're voting on T. 5, impact terms isn't a reason we lose. It's just an advantage of the interpretation. 6, all for arguments or framework. They were ruled about an argument that determines what we can and can't read in any case. We would read like have a race, but also exclude argumentations. 5, 7, they say they are the TVA, and they say they are the TVA, which means because it's not a model topicality, which means all of their impact terms apply to them just as much, which means you should make them sit through all this analysis before you vote on T. The only argument was that it was anti-black, but if it's true it's anti-black, we'll concede it and not go for it. That's the best model debate because it allows us to get back to substantive education. And since I am conceding that T is like, I'll concede that I'm not going for T and not defending something anti-black, it means it's not a reason to vote me down. Yeah, you should hold the line from like 1 hour to 2 hour extrapolation. Don't let this become 3 minutes of a blown up 2 hour. New app's bad. A couple framing issues on new apps. First, we're going to explain what our interpretation entails. We do not prevent them from breaking new apps. We do not say that they have to send the entirety of the affirmative choice. We do not say they have to put anything on the wiki. All they have to do is text us what their method or their advocacy is and what they're rolled about is. That is 2 sentences max, and does not link. This is not generic disclosure that says they need to disclose everything to us and tell us exactly what their affirmative is or put it on the internet for everybody to see. It's just the advocacy text and the roll about, which means that they have to win a unique decide of reading the advocacy text and the roll about specifically. Second is that all of their offense is non-unique. We inevitably will see the affirmative. They read it in a public debate round with tons of people watching and observers, which means that there is no such thing as them hiding it from me or some sort of opacity, which means that the opacity is impossible and they need to quantify why it is uniquely good that I find out the advocacy text and the roll about 30 minutes later than I would otherwise, which obviously none of their offense can, because the point is that I will inevitably discover what their affirmative is, which means that it's not just a question of whether or not I will discover in a format in which I am prepared to engage in with. The third one is that engagement is good and turns all of the app offense. We're going to you should crossify the argument from T, which is that engagement is a prerequisite to any sort of tactics building, which is also the card we read at the bottom of the cap. K argument is that in order to determine what the best tactic is, we need to have rigorous contestation in which we go back and forth to exchange arguments, etc. and debate over what is the best method for Black liberation, which also means that internal link turns underneath their role of the ballot, because if we cannot engage with the affirmative, it is impossible for us to determine what is the best liberation strategy. Debate gets its value from being a site of engagement, not just a monologue. If not just a monologue, there is no value and the unique competitive value that debate is able to give is to the process of engagement. Just them reading their app, there's no way that can produce the unique value that debate produces, because all the values of debate are reliant on having an opponent that is well prepared and able to engage with the affirmative, which allows us to, one, test whether the affirmative is true, which means that you should presume the affirmative is false insofar as we're unable to test it. And second means that it's impossible to determine what is the best resistance strategy, because there's no argument or discussion over that, which also turns all of their offense, because it means that there's no sort, even if there is increased visibility, it means that it's just visibility of a monologue occurring and not genuine discussions about anti-blackness. The line by now extend the internal link, they have conceded that it makes us impossible to be negative against new apps, because we can never prepare for stuff to link into their affirmative. We can never prepare for stuff to link into their affirmative. We can't prep case arguments. I couldn't even Google their method beforehand and read the first few pages of Google, determine what it is, determine what the core responses to it and what stuff it would link to, which is obviously something that I would be able to do if I was given 30 minutes of preparation. It doesn't allow me to prep out the entirety of their affirmative. I don't get access to things like their narrative, and it still gives them a strategic advantage, but it allows me to get a certain amount of engagement that allows me to engage in the first place, not in the line by line proper. The next first thing they say is that the counter interpretation just against black kids, but one day I'm going to extend the Davis 19 card here, which indicates that opacity is bad, which means opacity is not something that's productive. The argument is that one, capacity is ineffective. Inevitably, your attempts to just sort of hide your stuff for the sake of hiding it will be overdetermined by structures of domination that will always find a way to out it. We're driven by this round the fact that you have to read this app publicly anyway. Second is that it's not a good in and of itself. It's only good if it's weaponized towards a political discourse that's able to build broader movements, which is all the impact calculus on the top of how we turn it. It's especially important that in discussions like in rounds like this, I'm able to engage with the affirmative, because we need to have a rigorous discussion about the problems of the 1AC. The more important the 1AC is, the more inclined you should be to vote negative, because the discussion of whether the 1AC is good or bad is what is important from debate, not just the reading of it. The next thing they say is the guerrilla tactics. I answered that above, and we've turned their tactical argument, because in order to win this debate, they have to win. That the value debate comes from just them reading the app and not having anyone respond to it. But we've made a rigorous argumentation for why engagement is a good thing. They say it allows them to refine resistance. We turn this argument. Refining resistance is better. Refining resistance is better under the role of the counter interpretation, because we're able to engage with the affirmative, which allows for better refinement processes, which turns all of their offense. The next thing they also conceded off the tactics card was that you should prefer long-term strategies over individualistic politics. We should prefer what cultivates the long-term strategies that are able to cultivate better methodologies for fighting for Black liberation, which is distinct from just whether or not they win this one round, which is an individualized form of politics. Only the method of engagement can provide those long-term forms of politics. It's not psychological violence. It just requires them to send the role of battle text and the advocacy text. Obviously, no neutral re-articulation for why me engaging with them is psychological violence. Obviously, the point of debate is engagement, and it's a point of debate is engagement. It's not psychologically violent for me to negate their arguments, because they introduce it in a forum where I'm required to negate them. The next thing they say is I need, but one, our interpretation was not specific to topical apps. Second is that they definitely don't meet our interpretation. They definitely don't meet our, because yeah, interpretation was just that they must disclose the advocacy test and roll the battle text at the flip, which means that they definitely don't meet our interpretation. Second is that they still independently don't meet all of the cross-text proves that they were extra topical. We agree that all of their stuff proves that it's topical to some extent, but they don't meet our interpretation because they also defended the methodology, which wasn't topical. The next thing that they said is it leads to outing, but no, it doesn't, because they're not required to disclose things like narratives, etc., which means that it definitely does not lead to outing. The case page proper, the app obviously turns the case in out ways, but the next thing that we're going to go for is presumption. They actually need to articulate what is the unique benefit to the ballot. If you genuinely think that having Zion in finals of the TOC is going to overcome these structural impacts, and you think, then fine, give them a solvency. But obviously that's not how it works. The idea that we can tokenize individual people and show them as instances of Black liberation and Black success in debate, but that is an awful form of visibility politics. The tokenization where the debate instructors are like, look, TOC is inclusive now, and uses that excuse to demobilize movements, which means it turns the affirmative.
Or just case in the show.
I'm good.
Are any judges not good? Okay. They conceded the framing for this round. The role of ballots endorse embrace black hair. 2 and are undercover our framing question, which means your ballot should filter what prioritizes communications, communal spaces for black hair, and allows niggas to feel themselves and be heard. The thesis that after the pressure undergirds black interiority makes black people feel unable to feel themselves, and niggas around the black communities are under pressure to prepare black males for the world. And white world self-conceded that impacts their try or die, creates exhaustion when black people are mostly mentally exhausted, and creates battle fatigue. The methodology was conceded black liberation theology, intersection of spiritual aberration, racial system is best for black fair community building, hope, liberation, epistemology. Your ballot will be an affirmation of black theory, black liberation theology, affirmation of black spirituality, which shows the ways in which blackness can be affirmed in positive light, which is why your ballot goes far further than the individuals, but why the debaters and judges can use their ballot to affirm and sign off on blackness seen as positive. The performance was also conceded. Extend my performance. We talk about my feelings, perspective, experience, even former pros and when it sees what it looks like to embody black hair, and the job is to do it about the performance outweighs the most supportable in real world, and it was conceded both the way and the performance itself, which me embracing sociality, which just as they did not go for we can't win case. We said it outweighs all the terminal impacts like engagement, tokenization, predictability shows why performance is how you will frame what matters in and around. Now, semantics and awareness will concede all the responses to presumption and ballot arguments. One, it's not a question of solvency, rather endurance and survival. The app allows niggas to long go, allows niggas to detach themselves from the negative prescribed to us. Two, black hair performance was conceded. The why performance is good for this presumption, just as they prefer to anti-black score, which allows anti-black to touch masculinity, which shows that they cannot talk as you say ballot, but not relying on vote for me on my identity or individual, because one, it's about affirming my methods of grammar of suffering for black folks to understand this negativity. Two, it's about communal texts. And three, you can see that even if we are individuals, you can see that this is the only way for niggas to feel and care for themselves, because our thesis claims that if niggas can't feel care for themselves, they're denied, they're creating a form of exhaustion, that we have to individually care for ourselves, otherwise you cannot self-case. Now, this show promise that they didn't grapple with the overview and analysis on the CTMs that apply to the show. The abuse story performance filters the opposite we prescribe by being illegible, which overturns their arguments of the counter-interpretation to your interbias black kids. Your only argument you make to this is that Davis responds, but Davis does not respond to the counter-interp because Davis lacks specificity to black kids trying to fill themselves within the base. It shows how the counter-interp cannot solve your offense. Have your fear engageable around every single other round. How many times you debate black fear? It just allows for a safer space that encourages black fear to champion in performance of embracing care. And so I get the way the case because case and ways to survivability and accessibility. This work was done on T and also across the play to over. They did not answer the equation. So it shows that we outweigh and try that the engagement argument is any reason we prove engagement is bad means that there's no reason to solve this case because we have an active reason this is bad. It's counterproductive impact. Turn engagement promotes compensation of black care, which creates an incentive to negate and problematize and fragment black communal tactics that care for black people rather than delivery over the best one. Also does not turn cases because case does not need to be tested or produce rural skills. If it does as little as provide black youth cover like myself, it has done its job to performance of endorsing black care. You say true testing, but you conceded the argument on T that true testing is aimed at because just because I wasn't legible enough means that you shouldn't trust your arguments. Obviously, that's a horrible model debate. Also, embrace predictability. That being unpredictable is good to evade forms of fugitivity. We can care for ourselves without having to worry about how you can engage because I have to labor myself, which recreates exhaustive politics states a lot long term. But what the hell does long term do when we have a try dice nail down straight concede? You say it's about the individual. We done the work of why it's not the individual on case. Look, performance, framing, and cross application from T and Y. We impact on the model. Engagement predictability are conceded. Performance and case weighing frames what matters on the T show. Obviously, their engagement doesn't matter under the performance model. Great debate.
Good debate.
We're in.
Here.
I'm here.
All right,
And
and before the decision's announced, I just, both debaters did an incredible job. Also, what was I going to say? If any of you is a senior, you don't have to listen to the RFD if you don't want to. I understand. So then, who wants to announce?
I can, since I was last. Congratulations for making it to quarters of the TOC. This is a huge achievement. This was a phenomenal round, if I'm just phenomenal. This decision was a 2-1 for the affirmative from Strake.
And I think that both debaters did an excellent job and have been excellent debaters over the years.
Yeah. So I negated. I'm having a hard time cross-applying the framework of the round if I don't think you get access to the framework. I think a lot of the offense of the app for this is answered by your stuff is sort of non-unique because I can't sort of prepare for it, and that is said in the 2. And the violence disclosure brings and stuff will not matter because the moment that you've read this, especially with a ton of people watching, means that your tactics and all the sort of stuff in your app is sort of non-unique. The cross applications from the T-shell, I think could have helped me win the round for you, but I don't think it's specifically contextualized to disclosure. I think the most I have about predictability is why predictability and resolved, the policy action would be anti-Black, but why would disclosure specifically on the role of the ballot and the advocacy would sort of be anti-Black in conjunction with the non-unique stuff? I'm sort of unsure on this question. I do the cross-application of the framing question, but that's app framing. And then I got some created conditions in which if I view that the app is sort of suspect on engagement because there would be some sort of psychological violence on both sides, it's hard for me then to give the full weight of the framework. So I'm just very hesitant to give it. And that just makes it very much so that I don't think the AF gets to weigh as much of the AF versus this disclosure shell. And because there's no way to sort of engage with it. The most I get sort of with this violence and exhaustion stuff, but again, it's predicated on if I weigh the AF. I know it's in the 1AR. I'm missing sort of the warrant for it because the 1AR was hellishly fast on this. And I don't know what the specific warrant is as to why exhaustion on this specific disclosure would be the thing that should win me the round in this. And if there's no engagement with the app, I think Sam is winning some terminal solvency deficits that the app doesn't get access to minus the app, except for the poetry. But the poetry is predicated or is super late breaking for me in how I should weigh it versus the disclosure shell. So I'm very hesitant to do so. The one question that I have throughout this debate is who won the flip? Because if Sam had won the flipped and negated, that's their own screw up because history proves that people will not disclose new apps. And I've also sort of wanted some it's Gillespie with communal care. Literally, it should be in your back files, right? Because you're Harvard-Westlake, you should have these ready to go. But I also want more traditional ways as to why this is just not a thing in Elam breaking debates, especially at the TOC level. Would have probably helped me a lot in helping to go towards the AF more in this round.
Okay, I'll go next. I thought that the neg just let too much of the AF go in terms of that level of engagement. When a lot of the AF is conceded, that means also the theoretical parts of the AF are conceded. All the theoretical parts of the AF are the communal care, all that other stuff. I don't see why that can't be weighed against the theoretical argument, especially when the response directly is that this would put an undue burden on Black people, right? As in, we're not just disclosing this part. We don't necessarily have to just do the traditional norms of breaking new, but some other things as well. Especially when the point of the theory violation is that it would turn case, right? I think that the point of or at least what I got out of that, the point of the reason to have to disclose is not for just your individual fairness, but so these methods can be tested, because ultimately we want to make sure that the best possible things go forward. And that seems like much more of a because that would turn case. But it seems like case is not, the case is really just about like protecting spaces for Black people. And it doesn't seem like the neg ability to interact, I don't know why that would come before case, right? I don't know, especially given so much of the case that gets conceded. I think that the neg would have been better going really aggressively after case, especially the top of case, because I thought the best arguments that were made were on like, if you're saying vote for you and representation, how that is necessarily negative, right? Like how that can be, how all of the negative things that can come from that. I think that there's strong arguments that can be made that this type of thing is like, would allow giving Black people the ability to sell out, right? Like this doesn't solve any structural problems. I think that more effort on that in the 2NR, and the 2NR mostly based on that, would have made it a lot more difficult for me to vote AF, because like, you know, it would have effectively undercut the basis for the AF, and it would have been difficult. I also think that for the AF, I thought the AF could have, for me, could have even won more easily by simply extending the offense that was there, in terms of why these weapons are bad, right? That's in the case. That's in the 1AR in terms of just in some of the answers to topicality. I think that just like, hey, I have affirmed. You could like, I think that the neg could have run autonomous weapons good, right? Like could have argued the exact opposite of the resolution and negated in a very traditional way of negating about a need for these weapons in some cases, and some countries should have them, whatever. Like I think that there's a middle section of this case that's just, hey, the other parts are framing, and this part is actually the offense that links back to the framing. So I think to some extent it's a very traditional case with just framing that is that's theoretical, right? Like the framing that's about Black care and Black theology, whereas the actual part of the case does say like, hey, these are weapons bad for Black people, bad, right? So that's why I ended up voting affirmative. For me, the decision wasn't. I thought it was a good round, but I thought it was a clear round.
Are you done, Mr. Austin?
Yes.
Okay, I largely agree. Mr. Austin. I think there's a couple of places of deviation. I thought that, to be honest with you, that this was like a weird 2NR considering what the 1AR did on that case on the capitalism critique. I thought there was a lot of money left on the table there in terms of what I thought maybe the 2NR should have been. I think that there was very little really said about what the net benefits of the permutation would have been. I think if the debate had come down to, look, his rugged individualism, whether you agree with any rest of the case, like causes the inability of a communist party to be made, also allow Black people to sell out, the massive Black people, what is that logic? And you kind of sat there in a 2NR. This might have been a nice hot L for Strake Jesuit, I think, because I thought based on the way it was covered in the 1A, based on the way it was covered in the 1AR, I thought that's where it was going. But I think in light of the way it went, I looked at a few different questions. First, I looked at the AF's questions of Black care. Second was communal inspiration. Last was Black male psychic and emotional vulnerability. Then it was, the last two was sort of the liberation, sort of spiritual question, Black theology, spiritual question, and then guerrilla tactics. And then I looked at the negative. You had basically four ideas as well, which was engagement, rigor, refining resistance strategies, truth testing, and reasonable disclosure. And I think that the move to say that this somehow turns the case is, I think, where the problem is. I don't really understand sort of what is the level of engagement, what kind of engagement do you have? Because as I said, I thought that the Cap K was kind of the move here. I also think that there was a risk that there was a couple things. I think that the AF wins that Black care is important. At the end of the debate, the 2AR sort of pivots only to whether or not I think this methodology of Black care is important. Should we preserve certain spaces for Black people? Should there be certain levels of spaces where Black people can be malleable in terms of the way in which they understand their particular strategies to create these spaces where they can feel free and absent the exhaustion of the status quo? And I don't really know why necessarily this level of engagement, given that you had an argument that I think linked does that. I think the best argument you literally have, I think, is in the 2NR where you say that we have to be able to rigorously test these questions when they matter, particularly around questions of like liberation, struggle, race, etc. I think that is sort of compelling, but I don't really know why that necessarily outweighs all the impacts of the affirmative. Like I said, I thought this was probably not the right 2NR in this situation, but it was a good debate. But as Mr. Olson said, also a clear one.
And I would just reiterate that I absolutely agree with Chris Randall on the K, because I was going to vote. I would have voted had the negative spent more time simply on the turns on case, right? But those turns on case, like individualism turns on case, are also linked to the K. And so, like, I was compelled just by the arguments on case, like your methodology allows you to sell out Black people and go into this like individualism and representation as being highly negative, right? That was compelling, just not enough time spent on that. Had that been the focus of the 2NR, I'd have been looking at it just as a straight turn to case. But I absolutely agree with Chris Randall, because that not only functions as a turn to case, it would function as a link to the CAP-K, which was kind of light, right? I know they had some permutation stuff on it that was pretty good in terms of Black liberation and theology, but that link on the vote for me, right? We need Black representation. That links so well and potentially is true, right? Like the way in which race gets operated at, and how white people pick Black people to represent people who attack other Black people, either overtly or covertly. So Melanie, that would have been, I would, hands down, I'd have voted for you on that in terms of the CAP, in terms of links to the CAP-K, in terms of going fully against terms on individualism. I think that would have outweighed the whole Black liberation theology thing. I think that would, because the permutation was really on Black liberation theology. It was not on this individualism question, which was really undercovered and open target.
Gospel is being going forward right now. Yeah, I think that to me, I was kind of shocked at the 2NR choice because I was like, he's sort of conceded at this point, which ain't good. Particularly given the cross-examination questions that you're asking, where you're like, why do you do this? What does it do? Who is it inspired? He like, right. You kick rocks. Like, no, I thought that was a place to kind of have the conversation, to be honest with you. And I think that being the 2NR choice being, we just need to be able to rigorously test this thing. And I'm like, but you got an argument that links, and I'm not really sure why this particular level of testing turns the app. I thought the K was kind of a better place to go. And I think you had a nasty link too that they had functionally conceded.
Right.
Nasty link.
A plus X, just embraced.
So.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations, Samantha.
Congratulations, definitely.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you, and good luck.